Greetings all. Welcome to this morning's horribly edited video. It is not quite 7 o'clock in the morning, so I am talking quietly because I am not ready for any loud things, including myself. What I'm about to do is I'm not doing super early in the morning for any specific reason. We just have a puppy that woke us up, so we're awake. So I'm doing things. All right, so what we're going to talk about today is structural reinforcement. By the way, there's a big lesson learned here, and that is don't just order a thing from a tank manufacturer. Tell them how you plan on using that thing, because they may have recommendations for you for, oh, you may want to consider something. We didn't do that. And so we started, realizing that something wasn't working quite right. And we contacted Toad Ranch and they were like, oh, we have a thing for that. And they sent it to us right away. Like, it was super easy. We should have just told them in advance and they would have just sent it to us with the tanks in the first place. But we're doing it after the fact. So essentially, what we are doing today is, if you notice, I've got these two wooden supports in here in this tank. You can't leave supports in there that are wooden with, the snakes in there, because they can get splintery and stuff like that. Plus, it can, it's wood and it can rot and all that jazz. But that's there because we took two 40-inch tall tanks and stacked them and made that top one bioactive. Bioactives are heavy. So what Toad Ranch gave us is these support systems to reinforce the bottom tank. So here's how these things work. Don't mind Abby in the background comforting a very gravid April. Basically, this is a 3-part support system. This is a center support beam that's going to go right in the center of this opening, right where the glass doors are. That's the weakest part of the tank, so this reinforces that from the floor to the ceiling. All good. Then we've got this thing in the back, and this little notch in here is to hold this. So this is a support beam, a little kind of like T-shaped, almost like an I-beam, that goes across front to back the tank, and then it just kind of sits right in this little groove. I think this is brilliant. The shape of this means that this is super sturdy. It's also very lightweight. And this is really easy to install. Toad Ranch made this in a really, really smart way, which is that if you do this at the start of the build, you can install it that way. But if, like us, you didn't ask for this, it's still relatively easy to install after the tank is built without needing to pull everything apart. This piece is just also self-adhesive, stuck on with this 3M tape, huge amounts of 3M tape. They do tell you, let this cure for 24 hours before you make it weight bearing. So what I'm gonna do is leave those temporary supports in while this is fully drying, and then it'll be good to go. So off we go. We're gonna start the build. Now, the other reason to do all of this right from the start is that this support beam is not the only thing on the ceiling of this tank. There's an RHP over here, there's LED lights, there's a UV light over here. So what I'm gonna have to do in order to get this to go in, you're gonna get a little bit blinded, is I'm gonna have to move this light bar that I have across the front of the tank. All right, so I've got it put together. It's ready to go in. I'm going to talk about one more thing first, though, and that is placement. So something that we found, and I don't know if this is true for all species of snake, because we keep like 4 species of snake. We are not experts on all of them, but 4 reticulated pythons. And where's Aries? Aries is going to help me illustrate this next point. Something that we found is the placement of this center support in the front opening of a tank can make a real big difference, because retics are so active and they can kind of be known for pushing. So something that you'll notice is we actually modified this particular center support so that if you see, there is no space where on the side of this, this center support, there's no space where he could get his face in between that support piece and the front door, right? So by the back door, it's totally fine. There's no gap there. But you don't want there to be space where he can get his face in between that center support piece and the front door, because, you know, that little gap there, he could be pushing a little bit. So when we installed these in these tanks, we're specifically putting these supports. If you can see where, and this is La's tank, you can see where her back door ends. It's right here. We're gonna put this support right next to that, because if we moved it over, there would be a gap between this PVC piece, I don't know what to call it, this thingamabob, and the front door. And there would be room for her to get her face in there. She's not a retic, she's still very active, particularly for a boa. So again, just something that we had seen happen in the past, and so now it's just something that we avoid. Next up, shout out to eye protection. I don't care if it's just one cut. I don't care how ridiculous you look, like a minion in these things. I literally just had a friend have like some dust from a bandsaw get kicked off while she was making a cut. She had like glasses style goggles on, went over her glasses, got stuck in her eye. She literally had to have it scraped out, which, oh my gosh, that sounds horrible. And now she has to wear an eye patch. So shout out to Pirate Kelly, but wear your eye protection. You know when you're like done with a cold, but you still can't stop coughing? It makes shooting a video very hard. Anyway, sláinte. La is up in this humid hide over here because she's in shit. So we are gonna try and get this situation all installed for her without disturbing her. We'll see how well I do, because the thing about this is, in order for it to work, it needs to be a tight fit, which means installing it can be a little fiddly. So I've already done a dry run to kind of figure out how I want to do it, where I want to place it, the direction I want to go in, all of that stuff. So we are to the point now where I'm going to start peeling off these self-sticky. The cough syrup has not kicked in yet. These self-sticky tabs. So the self-adhesive tabs here, really, really handy for, you know, quick, easy install. But it does mean I have to get it right on the first try.
And also,
peeling these off does not make for very compelling video.
especially when there's 6 of them. 6 of them is good though, because obviously we'll want this to be.
All right, wish me luck, because if I mess it up, it's on video. Boom. How easy was that? I still have some screws that I need to put in to keep this center support in place, but you can also see really well now that I have the doors open. This is what I mean by having this support line right up next to the door, so that there's no gap for like wedging or pushing. There we go, all installed. Lights are all wired. How good does this look? The other thing too is that until I had that centerpiece in, I hadn't actually plugged in all of her lights. So this is the first time her lights have been all nice and bright and new. Fantastic. All right, we're back a few days later. The supports with the cross beams that we got from Toad Ranch, those are installed. But we wanted to take it one step further. Why? Because this tank has on top of it a 6 foot wide, 40-inch tall, 2.5 foot deep bioactive tank. There's so much weight going on up here. So we wanted to be doubly sure that the bottom tank was sturdy enough to hold the top tank. Just the gap from, kind of one side to the other is far enough that, it's 3 feet from that side edge to the center support. Well, if you think about like where studs and joists are in your house, they don't put them 3 feet apart. They put them 16 inches apart. So like half that. So we wanted to put some extra supports in between. So here's what we did. We killed 2 birds with 1 stone here. No birds were actually harmed in the making of this video. We wanted to create something that was structurally supportive, but also provided climbing enrichment for the animals. So what I have done is I have made these cleats. I made them with a hole saw and 2 pieces of PVC. And that formation is going to be used to hold together 3 of these PVC pipes. So that, and I've got those cleats on the top and the bottom. So essentially we can put these pipes into the tank right up here, like that. And we have a spot for the animal to climb. Now, the one I just showed you is actually the second one that's going in this tank. The first one right here, already done. So I can show you the finished product. Go back a little bit so you can see it from top to bottom. So it's got these cleats, right? One up there, one down at the bottom, right? Super secure, not going anywhere. But with 3 of them together, this can hold a lot of weight. So let's talk about installation. All right, this is my top cleat. I've already got it kind of attached together. It's just gonna get screwed straight into the ceiling. It'll be all set, done. All right, that is done, all installed. Next step, I have already threaded the bottom cleat onto these pipes. That's because once I get them into that top cleat, there is not gonna be enough room to thread this on, so I'm just doing it in advance. So next thing I'm gonna do is put these into the tank, get them aligned into that top cleat, and then we will be ready for the last step. All right, the last thing I need to do is put this bottom plate underneath these pipes. Why do I use the bottom plate? Because if I cut the pipes the exact length of the height of the tank, it would be too tight for me to get them in there. So what I did instead is I put plates on the top and bottom so that I can kind of tilt the pipes. And then also you can see I ground that down with my Dremel tool just to make it wedge shaped, almost like a shim. So what I can do is swing the pipes forward a little bit, get them on top of this bottom plate, and then shove everything back in place so it's nice and trued up. Everything here needed to be very precise measurements. Like these are like 38 and 1/8 inches exactly, otherwise they would not fit floor to ceiling in the tank. So let me get this done and I'll show you what it looks like. All right, so you can see that it's not straight up and down right now because once I got it installed, right, this is still too far forward, so I'm gonna need to nudge this back. I can push it a little bit with my hands, but it is already very, very tight. Now I need to get this, you can kind of see it here, 9.5 inches is how far this top plate is from the front of the tank, which means I need to get this 9.5 inches back there in order for it to be vertical. And it is right now at about 4 inches. So we've got a ways to go. But sliding PVC against PVC is relatively easy. I'm just gonna kind of take a mallet and gently knock it backwards until it's all straight. And then we know it'll be exactly the right height. Alrighty. So there we've got one support there. The center support here, another support there. This is a sturdy as hell tank, even with an enormous bioactive right on top of it. But it may be a little bit overkill, but we thought overkill was worth it for the safety of our animals. Sidebar, when I first started filming this, the clamp on my tripod that holds my iPhone on it hit the volume button, which starts recording. So it was recording and I didn't know. And so this is becoming a theme where I'm just recording myself doing nothing. And I look super cool doing it. One door on the left. Did I do it again? This one is bottom left, this one is bottom right, but I can put either in the front, right? I think. I did it again.